14125. The era of the inflection point, our attitude as we approach Chilseok, 1_2. Question: I would like to ask about the attitude we should hold as we approach Chilseok in 2026, the year of the inflection point. Chilseok, the profound holiday of the heavenly descendant people, is approaching. We have been making an effort while keeping in mind the Master's teaching that 2026, the year of the inflection point, will be a year when the world's long-standing contradictions come to light and great change occurs. But there also seems to be a part of us that feels anxious about the trials and changes we will face going forward. Master, as we mark this Chilseok of 2026, I ask for your teaching on what mindset and attitude our people should hold in daily life as we face the changes to come. Thank you.
When we keep saying inflection point, it's hard to know exactly which way to steer the helm. At its root, an inflection point refers to a change in people's thinking. A change in how people think. Now, as our thinking changes, we've passed through the period of evolution and entered the period of growth, and now that growth itself has finished, the environment in which we could live as 70% complete human beings has come to an end. So if the 70% growth period has ended, then from here on it's a matter of operation. From now on we have to put our ability out into society. Having grown, we must now put that ability out into society from where that growth stands. That's the era this inflection point is talking about. So why has this become an inflection point right now, at this particular time? For thousands, tens of thousands of years, we went through evolution, and then we began a 108-year project. A 108-year project. As that project began, we've now arrived at 70%. What 70% means is that we've grown to the point of becoming human. The time for becoming human has now arrived. It's the era of living out human behavior, having completed our transformation into humans after living as animals. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3. We're now at the point of passing Stage 2 and entering Stage 3, but because we aren't managing to enter Stage 3 yet, an inflection point has arrived where things absolutely must change now. Going forward, if we live as human beings ought to live, blessing will come, happiness will come, joy will come, all of it if we live as human beings ought to. So what happens if we live like animals instead? This is where it turns the other way. Having stayed in place without growing, having become human, we ought to live as humans, yet we live like animals. During the period of evolution, when evolution wasn't yet complete, it was fine to live like a beast. It was fine to live like an animal. But once the period of evolution ends and the period of growth ends, an era opens up where we're meant to live as human beings ought to, and if we don't live that way, everything becomes difficult. Why? Because we're living life backwards. If you live backwards, there's no answer except that things inevitably become difficult. What's happening right now is the final preparation work for this. That's what the inflection point is. This final preparation work is happening now, and it spans 3 years, 2025, 26, 27. So this year is 2026. Within these 3 years, we've now passed the halfway point. But how far past halfway are we? June has just passed and July has begun. Up through June, we were at the halfway mark. Now that it's July, we've crossed past halfway. That means it's now certain, if we live wrongly, transgression will come upon us. And when that transgression comes, how does it come? It comes as heavenly punishment. That's how it works now. This is no longer just a warning. From the moment the inflection point has passed, if there's something we're living wrongly, not making an effort, living incorrectly, we at least have to make an effort to set it right. Oh, I love the sound of make an effort. I'll just live as I please. If that's your attitude, then you're fighting against nature, fighting against the laws of nature, so heavenly punishment is bound to come. That's not something your own stubbornness can change. You just have to accept it. Who's going to say anything about it? When one person in South Korea receives heavenly punishment and falls into hardship, and that energy radiates outward, it reaches 100 people. That's the fact of it. When 100 people end up that way, how much does it affect society? An immense expansion occurs. And the center of that is South Korea. Not the West, South Korea. What's being called human society right now is something that has raised up one enormous old tree. This land of Haedong, South Korea, is the root of that old tree, sitting at the center. Until now, the root has simply held on to its own strength, but now has come the era when the root must actually use that strength. This is where the inflection point occurs. Humanity changes. Humanity can only change once the root people's thinking changes. It's only when people's thinking changes that the global village changes. It's only when the global village changes that the universe changes. This is what's meant by calling it the center, and so, human society is now coming to fully know what kind of nation South Korea is. One way or another, it's bound to become known. And that's why the Korean wave blowing right now isn't some kind of joke. So the fact that the Korean wave has arisen and South Korea is now undergoing change means that South Korea is being fully exposed to international society. Up until now it was hidden, but now South Korea's root is being revealed to humanity, being exposed, and once it's exposed, the people living in South Korea are the ones being exposed. So what happens if people end up being exposed in a very poor quality state? South Korea is a nation that was kept hidden until its quality improved enough. Because we have now all grown up and cultivated it, South Korea is now being exposed to humanity, which means the actions Korean people take must become a model for humanity. A model of what kind? A model for humanity as disciples of God. Why? Because we are heavenly descendants, which means we are disciples of God. Until now we've touched on this and that, but from now on we truly need to awaken everyone to how the operating principles of God actually work, and we need to find a way to help humanity walk the right path again. That's the work that must be done going forward. Now, among human cultures, religious culture is the one that has been engaged with the longest while still searching for the answer, yet has never found it, and that is the state human culture is in right now. Why? Because we are human beings, people who are the very protagonists carrying the principles of nature within us, so how the universe operates, how the global village is run, is that unrelated to me? No, it's 100% related, because we are human. So going forward is the era when we must find the correct answer about what is called divinity and share it. Setting divinity aside, scientists and intellectuals might say, "Ugh, if it's just talk about God, get rid of it." That was fine to say, but from now on, the fact is that divine energy is moving. And if divine energy is moving, we can no longer afford not to understand this divinity. So are we human beings unrelated to divinity? No, we are 100% related to it. It is the very root of nature. We must not fail to know ourselves. Once we know ourselves, we come to know others as well. Once we know others, we come to know humanity, and we go on to sort out what this being called a human actually is. If, until now, it has been an era of researching and cultivating the way, now it has become an era of taking that research and cultivation and organizing it into material. That is the inflection point. It's not a matter of this being right or that being right. It has simply become an era in which we must now organize everything. So what happens if we organize this well and present it to the world? No one in the world currently knows this, so humanity right now has its eyes lit up, desperately searching for the correct answer. If South Korea finds the correct answer, organizes it, and presents it in a way human society can understand, what do you think will happen? An era comes when the world trusts South Korea, trusts and follows South Korea's heavenly descendants. This is the era of spiritual culture. We are now heading into an era of spiritual culture. If we evolved and kept growing generation after generation, then in the end we arrive at an era of spiritual culture. And once we head into an era of spiritual culture, we cannot avoid entering the realm of the divine. And once we enter the realm of the divine, where exactly is this global village we're living in? And what is this earthly realm? Why did it come into being? Then what are we human beings? We now have to sort out the fundamental roots of all of this. And if we speak that fundamental truth and state the answer, it is this: you human beings are gods. You are gods, gods. When we speak of divinity, there is energy involved. There is energy within the earth, energy in the universe, energy in great nature. There is energy, and this energy taken as a whole is what we call divinity. The energy that exists throughout great nature, taken as a whole, is divinity. And if you break this energy apart, what do you get? Everything turns out to be made of extremely fine particles. All energy starts from fine particles, undergoes change after change, and is now being put to use so that it serves some purpose within a given environment. Our physical bodies are made the same way. Our bodies, too, are gathered together right now out of extremely fine, minute particles. This, right now, is energy. So who is it that uses this energy? The one who uses it, my own self, my own soul, That is what uses this energy. There is also something called the range of that energy. How you operate and use that range is what's called the divine power, Wuliik, the divine power of the gods. If society has given me this environment, what range do I have for how I can operate within the society? How do I handle the information I possess along with the information around me? Because information itself is energy. Information is energy. How do we operate this information? That is the direction our path forward lies in future society. What do we call that? We call it the era of spirituality. Going forward, humanity is at the inflection point heading into the era of spirituality. It is the inflection point heading into the era of spirituality. And who is the protagonist at this inflection point heading into the era of spirituality? It is the heavenly descendants, the ones who have been called humanity's leaders, hidden away and cultivated until now. These are the Hongik Ingan leaders. When these leaders come out properly into the world and lead humanity, humanity becomes a Hongik world, peace comes to humanity, and all of our brothers and sisters living throughout humanity can be given a life lived joyfully. Those who lead this must have their wisdom opened, and must lead the world with wisdom. That is what makes them heavenly descendants. In this way, seeing through the eyes of wisdom, judging and discerning everything with wisdom, these things become what's now called cultural content. This is the cultural era that is opening, an era of spiritual culture, a culture that leads the society down the right path. It is an era in which we must now raise up an entirely new culture in every respect and use it to lead humanity. Because I'm explaining something so vast right now, I keep trying to rein it in, worried that if it keeps expanding it might wander off somewhere into the mountains. But today, as we study on the occasion of Chilseok in July, once we get through June, we cross past the halfway point, even at this inflection point. That means starting this year, something immense is going to change. If preparation was being made all along to bring about this change, then from now on, the change is simply going to happen. This coming month of July is an extremely important month. Tremendously important, and it depends on what kind of thinking we hold, though even that thinking follows a law of mass. The thinking of a person who wields great power within nature has a mass that shifts everything, and that person can change the world with a single word. Right now, on this earth, whose words carry the greatest mass? Whatever this person says is what changes this world. This is what's called the world of the gods. From now on, it's human gods that operate it. Now, in terms of human gods operating things, we have had ministering spirits and ancestors, and all of these spirits have grown spiritually, but from now on, it is human gods who take over the operation. The subject that operates things shifts to being the human god. This is what's meant by calling it the inflection point. Until now, we believed in and followed gods, trying to learn from them as models while we grew, but from now on, that ends with simply kneeling and praying to them. Instead, however we humans think, discern, and lead will be what all the gods follow. A human world is coming. A human world. We are now crossing over into a human world. Crossing over from the animal side into a spiritual human world. That is what this inflection point is about. So, what we do must change, and how we think must change too. If someone lives simply to eat and survive, is that a spiritual person? Answer me that. If you live just to eat and survive, that's an animal's kind of life. Here we are now returning to being spiritual people, so at this inflection point, can we get by as people who live merely to eat and survive? That's going to be hard. From now on, if you live just to eat and survive, you're going to have a hard time. But if you become a spiritual person, one who acts spiritually within society, you will now live an extraordinarily radiant life. This is the inflection point racing forward into the cutting edge. Technology will go cutting edge. All of science will now go cutting edge, and the way every human being lives will now go spiritual as well. This is no longer an era where we live begging the spirit gods, no longer an era of clinging to them. It must change into a world where we are the ones who must guide these spirits too. These are the things this person is now teaching you.